It's been 10 years since China banned the practice of Falun Gong, and although the abolishment of this spiritual discipline is happening thousands of miles away, reporter Jonathan Tamayo tells us how it also hits closer to home.
It's very small places, live about 15 to 20 people inside. Only one window of 1 meter square. And the food we eat is just like pig food.
Ji Li hasn't always been a Torrance resident. She fled China 3 years ago after being persecuted and imprisoned for practicing Falun Gong. After the Chinese government began the crackdown on Falun Gong practitioners, Ji was arrested and sentenced to 5 years in prison.
I think the reason why they cracked down the exercise because Falun Gong is a kind of belief, and anything related with spiritual nature is discouraged and outlawed.
Falun Gong is not a religion, but a spiritual discipline that believers say welcome people of all faiths and backgrounds. Followers take part in meditative exercises seen here and live by the principles of truthfulness, benevolence, and tolerance. While in prison, Ji says she faced unbearable conditions. She was tortured until she renounced her beliefs during what she calls brainwashing sessions. But Ji was unyielding and went on a hunger strike to protest the torture. In response, she was force-fed.
They insert a plastic tube from my nose to my stomach. More than 10 people tied me on the back because I refused to do that. And they didn't care how painful it is, and I threw up immediately.
China's stance towards Falun Gong is to only prosecute followers who have broken the law. But allegations of persecution and even organ harvesting of Falun Gong practitioners remain. To refute these reports, the government passed legislation outlawing any organ donations without consent, but followers claim these laws are not enforced. In an attempt to separate fact from fiction, a Canadian human rights lawyer and politician launched their own investigation. This Canadian report called Bloody Harvest is the only evidence that shows the Chinese government was involved with organ harvesting of Falun Gong practitioners. Ji fears many of her friends who suddenly disappeared are victims of organ harvesting, like her friend Huang Shu, who hasn't been heard from in over 6 years.
When I think about that, I really want to cry because so many Falun Gong practitioners will harvest their organ harvest but still alive.
Since Ji has moved to the U.S., she's become a human rights activist for Falun Gong.
Oh, it's really big difference because this is a free country. I can continue my life and I can do a lot of things to help the people in China.
Ji spends her free time at rallies and protests and has even spoken at a Torrance City Council meeting to raise awareness for her cause.
I hope they were freed, and I hope the persecution stopped. I hope the world say no to the Communist Party and help us to stop the inhuman and the most horrible happening in China.
For This Week in Torrance, I'm Jonathan Tamayo.
Thank you, Jonathan. The U.S. State Department has highlighted the persecution of Falun Gong in its annual reports, and Congress has passed a resolution condemning the persecution. Falun Gong is practiced freely in more than 70 countries around the world.